Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Carrie Dean. Really don't plan any rants tonight, however, you just never know what might hit me. Wanted to talk about the weather coming up now that we're entering the month of December. I'm not a big fan of models because they're wrong so often. Models do a good job, a fairly good job, of forecasting trends or things that might happen or pretty certain will happen, but they're horrible when it comes to timing an actual forecast. So I call them outlooks. They give you an outlook of what probably is going to happen, like a cold snap is coming in or cold wave. But they're horrible on dating. I mean, they can tell me that something's coming in 14 days, and they may be off a week. So it's terrible to tell people that you're expecting a cold snap in 2 weeks, and it takes it 3 weeks to get here. So that's the reason I do not like them to be used on television for the general public. Now, for meteorologists, climatologists, and the like, I guess they're fine to chit-chat about. But too many people on the internet, primarily kids and some junior meteorologists, who have either studied weather in high school, have it as a hobby, or maybe entering college with that as a major, they have their Facebook pages. And once these models come out, and they're provided free to the public, once they come out, all of a sudden on Facebook, oh, huge storm coming. The world's coming to an end. Great storm coming in 14 days. Then it makes the rest of us look stupid. Because a lot of times people will say simply, they are saying it's going to happen. Which encompasses me as well as the kid who has weather as a hobby. So I wish they would either start charging for this so every little kid doesn't have it, or do some enforcement, because it gives meteorologists a bad name when this type of information gets out. We have a couple here in Indiana, major groups that just like to wave their arms, and I do not like that. When I was the president of the broadcast committee of the National Weather Association for 9 years, much more than I was supposed to be, but no one else wanted it, so we started the program. I wrote the bylaws along with Mr. Saul Hirsch, great man, great scientist, Mr. Hirsch and myself, plus members of the National Weather Service at Silver Springs. A great deal of it was done by them, and my tapes were reviewed by the National Weather Service personnel as well as Mr. Hirsch for me to get my first, which I do have the first seal ever issued by the National Weather Association. But anyway, we developed that program, which gave seals of approval. Well, I think, and others agree, that we need such a program on Facebook or on anything. We need websites to either, one, start policing themselves, or two, will police you and give you a seal or give you a something to put on your screen. And I'm in talks now with one of the 3 or 4 major organizations which are interested. 2 are interested. I'm talking to all 4 because I don't want to show favoritism or not to any one group. It would be a big job. But anyway. Now, weather. What are we talking about? The outlook is out that says in about 14 days, it's called the 8 to 14 day outlook. Not forecast, it's an outlook. Outlooks generally are a little bit better than 50-50 accurate. A little better. Maybe 55 or 60% at best. Weather forecasts going out 72 hours in much of the United States now are approaching 90% accuracy. I know everyone remembers the misses, but you don't remember the hits. So that's the situation. That's why I don't like these long-term, drawn-out weather models. If you just understand how they're done, how they work mathematically, how they move cubic meters of parcels of air around, and every partial of air and how it interacts with the next partial, taking into consideration multiple factors, including the chaos theory. I'll call it a theory, which says that a hummingbird in Japan can set off tornadoes in the United States. Its wings hit, certainly, can set off more patterns and changes and etc. That's an extreme of chaos. Is it possible? I don't know. But it just gives you the theory of chaos and how it interacts with the actual forecast. My problem with long-range models is that there are not enough recording stations, nor there are not enough observations taken hourly or more often than what we need. Even in the United States, there are not many. I mean, we have 4 sites in Indiana that are checked. We have 0 profilers in Indiana, or in much of the United States. Profilers use Doppler radar to look straight up at the atmosphere and tell us what's going on at different levels. That program was either delayed, scrapped, or whatever. We hope that in the next generation radar that comes out, that is fixed. From the research people that I know at NSSL and at a couple of other research sites, and by a private company called Barron, which we use at our facility, the radar that they are working on is the radar we need. And I'll tell you more about it one of these days. It's completely different than radar that you may be accustomed to seeing. It's more like sonar, pinging out in all directions at once. I'm not going to get into it. And using different frequencies for the weather that's appropriate for that. It's better to use a different frequency when you're looking at clear air as it is if you're looking at a storm. So the frequency going out in one direction will be different than the frequency hitting a storm. But, quiet, Gary. So, there are not enough reporting stations in the United States, let alone the rest of the planet, and the Pacific Ocean, or the Atlantic, or the Indian, to really give us a good understanding of weather patterns. We have satellites, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I look at discussions of the satellites and what they're showing, but that's one thing. Satellites are excellent for short-range forecasting. A thunderstorm will show up on a satellite before it shows up on radar, of course, because there has to be a parent cloud there. The cloud shows up on satellite, then the rain shows up on radar. So if you take the daily weather map, hourly, for the past 12 hours or so, and you take the current observations, which, is it 95 degrees with a dew point of 80, or what is it, plus you watch the radar, that is by far the best way to forecast weather when you're going out 3 days. That's a good weather forecast, going out 3 days. Now, most stations now do 7-day forecasts, which are getting much better, but they do not nearly approach 90% accuracy. The 90% accuracy is across about a 3-day period, 72 hours. Anyway, the lack of reporting stations. It's similar to going into the hospital with chest pains, and they give you an EKG with one lead on it. Bang, they press one here, and that's it. Of course, we all know they use 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different leads. That way they can map the electricity of the heart. If you got 1 or 2 leads, locations on the chest, it can't do a very good job. That's what we see with reporting stations for the National Weather Service or for Environmental Canada or whoever it might be. We do not have enough reporting stations. And not only that, we must have reports of what's going on upstairs. That's the reason rain-snow lines are so incredibly difficult to call, because there's no data. We don't know when it, yeah, we release weather balloons, but not as often as people think, and certainly not with the density that we need information on, and they're expensive, and they're not an efficient way to get upper level observations. You'd cover the ground eventually if they set them up as often as they should and get data as often as they should. I think they should take data every 8 to 12 minutes. The profiler system did that at multiple levels. I believe it's been a long time since I went to the research school on it, but at a dozen altitudes or so. So you know what the temperature is. So you know what the wind direction is at multiple levels. So you can tell if the precipitation is falling as snow or if it's falling as rain. If it's falling as snow, but it has to go through a layer of warm air, well, it's obviously going to melt and come down as freezing rain. Now, everyone's going to say, well, we have new dual polarization. Bullcrap. Dual pole helped a little. Looks at the raindrop, snowflake, both horizontally and vertically. Now we know it's a raindrop that's falling, but we know what its shape is, how large it is. And through algorithms, we have a fair idea if it's snow or rain, if it's wet snow or dry snow or all that. But we still don't know what's going on at multiple levels of the atmosphere outside of that one scan. I was a big fan of the profiler system, which took these multiple temperatures or conditions all the way up through the atmosphere. Now there's a program underway, there's a couple of programs underway using satellites, using low altitude semi-satellites, as I would call them, because they are not in a permanent orbit, nor are they in the parking location of the geosync orbits. But bottom line is, we just do not have enough data going into the supercomputers. And if we did have enough data going into the supercomputers, they couldn't process it in just a 6-hour period. Right now we have new model information every 6, 12, 24 hours, something like that. We need new model information hourly. When one model is running and starts at 12 noon, The same model needs to start another run at 1 p.m., at 2 p.m., at 3 p.m. Whenever the noon one is finished, we have new data. The 1 o'clock, the 2 o'clock. That's a huge increase in the computing capacity that we have from the National Weather Service. Is it coming? I doubt it. Not anytime soon, because it would be a massive block size, city block size building just to hold the computers. I mean, it's almost like having vacuum tubes. It's just not feasible currently. That's the reason I tell people I will believe in models when they get the input they need and when they get the computer capacity they need. And quite honestly, they must do a heck of a lot of work on the software, because the software does certain things, but it doesn't take into account lots of other things. There are models that some of the model casters use that don't even take into consideration the amount of moisture that evaporates from the morning dew, or the amount of moisture that comes off of lakes and rivers. But yet the models will forecast a certain amount of rain, or they don't know how much is evaporating. Now, that's just one or two. But there are other models that leave stuff out. There are no really complete model that I know of. Now, if someone knows of a model that runs all of the parameters needed, let me know. The European model, the GFS model, the North American, the Canadian, the no gaps, all the models that I know of do not take into account all of the data they need to take into account. So now we've just probably tripled the amount of computers needed. Well, anyway, my bottom line is in 10 to 15 years, maybe, if enough money is poured into NOAA. We'll wait and see. Now, I will have people vigorously argue against what I said, saying that they really trust the models. No. Now, there is a subsection, a subcategory of models, which are the short term. The BAMS model, for example, which is put out by Barron. The high resolution rapid refresh model, the HRRR, which has been renamed, I think, to the RU. That are pretty good. They still do not take into account all the factors they need to, but they're very good at getting it down to almost a 2 or 3 hour window of when a cold front will come through, for example, which would cause more severe weather. So they're getting much better on the short term, and they do run, at least part of my BAMS model, for example, that I use extensively, does run hourly. So it's updated and updated and updated, so you can see trends. But it does a pretty good job of, I'm satisfied with a 72-hour forecast. Beyond 72 hours, it's an outlook. It's the outlook for that may happen, may not happen. There may be a lot of changes between now and then. And there will be a lot of changes between now and then, as long as they run models every 12 hours. Stuff changes. Hummingbirds fly, so to speak. Well, I guess I did get on a rant tonight. I didn't really mean to go off that long. How long have I been recording? Oops, just about too much. What I was going to talk about was the weather for this December. I'll have to do that coming up. I will probably do it yet tonight. But there you have it. My outlook. I'll have to change the title of this to Model Forecasting. See ya.